I think that companies are the most amazing thing, companies of all types, because it's an entrepreneur looking at their own two hands and saying, I want to bring value to the world that's more than I can do alone. So come on board, everybody, and let's do 1 + 1 = 3 to drive value to other people, to help them in some way, which is why I love entrepreneurship.
Welcome to the Rooted Founder Show. I'm your host, Staci Gray. This is not your typical business podcast. Founders are whole beings with dreams and demons, drive and depression, grit and grace, resilience and rest. We're all these things, and navigating the peaks and valleys with a champion's mentality is what our conversations here are all about. We win some, we lose some. We learn, we sweat. We hide, we grow. I hope these conversations resonate with your soul and inspire you to become rooted. Now let's get into it. Today, I am so excited to chat with this guest. So I actually don't know a ton about this guest, but we're going to go on that journey together. But the thing I love about this guest is we're both part of an organization that does something very well. They scale trust. And trust is something that is foundational to any transformation in life. So this conversation is going to be very insightful because there's already a foundation of trust. The other thing about this guest that I love is he builds businesses, but he also teaches people how to do the same. And I'm on a crusade to help people build businesses they own that don't own them. And so I think I now have a comrade in arms. And the other reason I'm excited about this guest is from the digital print I have seen, he has figured out how to integrate his dreamer and his doer. And they have to meet in order to do anything big in life. So Ashtan, I am so excited you're here today.
Thank you for having me, Staci Gray. I'm so happy to be here.
So I gotta know, when did you realize there was a part of you that was meant to build businesses? Was it in your childhood or organic?
I was very young. Well, young-ish. So my background is I moved to DC in my late teens and just started taking every odd job in the world because I wasn't sure what else to do. So I would deal poker, clean carpets, I would bartend, I would stock warehouse trucks, then put on a tuxedo and work weddings, a little bit of everything. And what I really got, I think, out of that phase in my life is an element of service. Like it really, taught me. Like today, I'm a part of a hospitality group that owns a few bars here in DC. That's part of my portfolio, and I was actually at one of them. My little brother's in town, and so I was taking him around, and I told him that one of my favorite things to do if I have a hard day is go sit at the end of the bar when it opens, a little speakeasy on K Street called The Mirror. I'll take the end seat because it opens at 5, and I'll sit down at 4:59 and then just watch the people pile in and like watch each one get a drink in their hands. And it makes me so happy. It like cheers me up on tough days because I just get to watch a line of people be served, and that makes me happy.
So hospitality, like the industry of hospitality, led you to entrepreneurship because you wanted to be of service.
I would say of service in general. My first company was actually an IT services company. So what happened is the catering company I worked for hourly took a flyer on me because they saw that I'm fairly good at computers. Please don't tell anybody that because I really don't like fixing them anymore, but I did for a while in my first company. Because the catering company offered me a job as their IT director when I was 19, and 21 is when I formed my first LLC because I had other companies who wanted me to do this, like take over their IT environment, build out their email servers, BlackBerry servers, CRM tools, like IT operations stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's how it all started. That was sort of day one of entrepreneurship for me.
We share a similar story. So I started when I was 16. I graduated high school, started working for my father, who was an entrepreneur, and put systems in place. He handed me a copy of eMyth, put systems in place. And then other people wanted me to start doing it for them. And so it organically grew. And I feel like that's such a wonderful journey because you build the muscle of self confidence that, oh, I can do this because you're already doing it. And then you duplicate it for other folks. So, what was that? What were some of the ceilings, like those brick walls you hit in your journey to become an integrated leader? So, one that really embodies their alpha, like the hustler side that gets shit done, and then the empathy, which is the rooted side of you that remembers there's human beings involved.
Whew, great question. So thank you. I wasn't very good at my first company. It turns out I was fairly good at marketing and sales, but my joke is that we didn't have any EBITDA because I didn't know what it meant. So we were doing a lot of work and doing a lot of stuff. And I'd say in the beginning, I did the standard practice of hiring family, hiring friends, and, really just saying, come on board, folks. But without really knowing the basics of what I know today. So I did this very wrong, which is I think that people best suited to work inside of any company that exists is people who are inspired, excited, just compelled to be a part of the mission that the group is seeking to accomplish. And, back then, my first company, I was just like, come on board, anybody, please help me. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if this is going to work, but come be part of the journey and we'll see what we do. And a lot of people signed up to come be a part of the journey. And I learned a lot. I mean, quick answer to your question is how to figure it out. Is I did it wrong over and over and over for a very long time, because I'm almost to 2 decades of entrepreneurship and not, that's counting from 21 to today. I'm on my way to 2 decades. And in 2 decades, you get to make a lot of mistakes. And as you make a lot of mistakes, you get to learn not to touch the hot stove again, Staci.
As is my journey. I'm almost on my 2 decades and I've touched a lot of hot stoves. And I'm done burning myself.
Oh, I worry sometimes that the stoves are just going to get hotter as we keep going, though. But we'll see. We'll see. Lots of hot stoves, and hopefully we can at least avoid the obvious ones.
Yes. So I think there's one hot stove that you maybe have learned to avoid, and that's really your perspective on what companies truly are. And yes. Tell me about that.
Well, so, I recently went to an entrepreneurship conference in Tbilisi, Georgia, to speak on this topic. And I feel like I need to iterate the presentation because I don't know if anybody got it. But I need to do version 2.
Yes.
But the idea is that I think that companies, you think of companies, as a group of people. Judy Robinette actually has a great quote about companies. She says, and she's actually talking about networks in her book here, but in her book, I think it's the something, how to be a power connector. She says that when building a network, you're creating a community of like-minded people who will influence one another and create something greater than any of its members. So you have to be intelligent about the way that you build it. Mm-hmm. Great book, great author, but I think you could apply that to building any company. Everything from trade associations to nonprofits to government entities to for-profits like LLCs and Incs. Is at least in my theory is that these are communities. These are people coming together to accomplish more than the sum of their parts. And I think we need to lean into that a little bit and recognize that we could use a little bit more compassion in our corporate structures because we're all people trying to build great stuff together.
Mhm. Did you learn the lesson that more compassion was needed because you leaned too far into your alpha?
I would say I've probably gone the opposite way, is leaning too far into the empathy and
Mhm.
not realizing, there's a little bit of magic and power in, I forget which author this is, but it's the guy who talks about putting the right person in the right seat.
James.
And, I would have empathy, uh, have even for those who were the wrong person in the wrong seat.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say I learned more from that than the other way around, because I actually have always shied away from the more alpha side of leadership. I don't really like it. I like people who want to come together and build stuff together, like for the greater good. Because
Mm-hmm.
I think that companies are the most amazing thing, companies of all types, because it's an entrepreneur looking at their own two hands and saying, I want to bring value to the world that's more than I can do alone. So come on board, everybody, and let's do 1+1 = 3, to drive value to other people, to help them in some way, which is why I
Mm-hmm.
love entrepreneurship.
So the compassion going too far, I have definitely struggled with that in my life, and I label it as people pleasing. So
Yes.
I am doing for somebody what they can and should do for themselves. In a way, I'm robbing them of being the hero in their own story. And I've done that in
Yes.
business, putting the wrong people in the wrong seats and not having the courage to say, hey, this doesn't fit your natural wiring. Let's move you here or there. And so, how did you reconcile within your own self, lowering in a way your level of empathy and compassion, and replacing it with empowerment?
Well, I'm gonna plug a few folks here. So I'm gonna plug Kim Scott, another great author. She says that there are fewer greater joys than doing work you love, with people you care about, and achieving great results. And
Mhm.
I think that last one is one of my bigger stumbling blocks, because I'm sort of a run through the wall kind of guy, even if I have no idea what I'm doing. In fact, I've had two jobs. One of my old bosses, Jessica Riani, we worked together at McBee Strategic, now the Signal Group. She always said that she loved working with me, like loved and hated working with me, because she told me this last year. She was like, Ashton, no matter what, I knew you would get it done, even if you had no idea how.
Mhm.
You would just keep running at the wall and running at the wall, and it would eventually be accomplished. And I'm durable, and I don't mind that. And I think one of my entrepreneur flaws over the years is just because I am that way, assuming that other people are that way. But the thing is, in the second decade of entrepreneurship, I think that's actually dead wrong. Like, I think that there are people who don't need to run at a wall. I think people are happiest when they're achieving great results. And I think that, a great leader will put people with the right talent and the right seat, and they'll be happy about showing up every day because they're doing something they're good at. And if they're in tune with the mission of the organization, they're doing something they're good at to achieve something they care about. And that's where the magic is.
Yes, I have made that exact same mistake. And now I believe that not everybody is wired the way I'm wired. Nobody wants to be running into a brick wall and
No.
pushing through it. A lot of people are just very, very content and happy to show up, know exactly what's expected of them, do it, know that they're contributing towards a bigger cause, and going home at night completely fulfilled with what they put in that day. And
Yes.
as leaders, that's our gift. That's the environment we get to create for the people that work for us.
And it is nice to not be personally running into walls over and over and over as well.
Yes, that is a win. So, how do you avoid running into those brick walls?
Well, I think visibility around the corner simply comes with experience. For ourselves, I mean, I would say the biggest tip I have for anybody is anytime somebody sets out on a new mission that they haven't gone on before is to interview 10 people who have already summited that mountain.
Mm-hmm.
It saves so much time and so much trouble and so much running into walls, because at the very least you'll learn that you shouldn't do the thing at all. And if you're open to hearing that feedback that my idea is a bad idea, and these days I am, because I don't really like going face first into walls in decade two. So if somebody says, Ashton, that's an okay idea, but I tried that and it failed, I'll say, okay, good. I'm not going to try to do it that way, because I don't want to do it that way. But just getting that, essentially doing your roadmap with other people's experience can save us a whole lot of pain and trouble.
How do you take somebody's input? So you run it by 10 people. And how do you filter it through what's authentic and true for you and what you know is going to light your soul on fire versus accepting the feedback and it suppressing the dream inside of you?
Well, I think with 10 people, and you could go as low as 3 and as high as 100. But I think let's say I have a zany idea for, like, I'll give you an example. Something I haven't done before is I haven't done like a private equity style roll up. I'm not currently planning to, but I may consider it at some point because it could be interesting and fun. I would just go, I wouldn't really go to somebody who has done that and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking about doing. I would instead just say, hey, I hear that you've done this. Would you be open to sharing your journey with me? So it's really building the sort of personal short-term equivalent of like a library of knowledge from those who have been there before, and then choosing the pieces that I think apply to what I'm doing. And, at this point, the ego is kind of been beaten out of me in terms of building things that I shouldn't, because like building things for me instead of building things for the market. Like I'm kind of done with that. Like I want to build what the market wants, because if you build for other people by understanding their needs, like you'll go further and faster. It'll be easier. Marketing will cost less. People will understand it more. And you won't just be pushing a boulder up a hill the entire build.
So in what you're saying right now, I'm hearing that you use your empathy to connect with what the market wants, and then you use your alpha to build what's necessary to deliver it.
I think that's a great way to put it, Staci. Yes, exactly. And first understanding and then running, but hopefully not into any walls.
I don't even know if we can avoid running into brick walls, because here's why. Hear me out on this. I think that we have the business that we have because we become that type of leader. And so if we want a different type of business, if we want more growth, we want more network, we want more reach, we want more expansion, we have to become a more evolved leader. And I have never gone through a growth evolution or a growth transformation in my life that did not include hitting some type of brick wall.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
the end of yourself that gets you to reinvent yourself, that brings the next layer.
Yes. No, I agree with that as well. And who is it? Brian Buffini likes to say, when we fail and we hit the ground, it's not, he says that it's really about how high we bounce from there as the mark of our success. So hitting the ground, hitting a wall, I think it's dusting ourselves off and getting back after it again.
Yes. I think not many people bring up Brian Buffini, so I am shocked you know him. Did you take his heritage profile ever?
I have not taken the profile. I have listened to about 200 episodes of his podcast, which is amazing.
Yes, he is amazing. I took his heritage profile years ago, probably in the first decade of brick walls. And one of the profiles said that my insatiable appetite for freedom is so much like a wolf. Like if a wolf gets trapped in a bear trap, they will chew off their own hand or a paw just to get free. And that's how much I crave freedom, which I guess means I was meant to be an entrepreneur. But I feel like that drives a lot of folks. Okay, circling back to another topic that you just said was, if we hit those brick walls, learning to push through them. And something that I have found in my life, and tell me if it resonates with you, but I have learned that when I hit those brick walls, not to over-identify with the failure of what is coming up by hitting that brick wall, because that develops a lot of shame in me, like I shoulda, woulda, known better, which actually halts my growth and progression.
I love that. Yeah, I love essentially the idea of distancing ourselves from the negative emotions and simply utilizing it as a data point and saying, hey, we shouldn't go this way. Like, let's loop back to the last fork and try the other way.
When you do that, do you lean on past successes to give you that grit, or where do you find that within yourself?
Well, my joke is that, I should have given up probably a decade and a half ago, but I'm not smart enough to know when I should quit. I just keep going. It's, I have a wildly high pain and risk tolerance. So where that comes from, I think some of it's genetic. Not really sure.
DNA, every human has it since we share human DNA.
Yes. No, it's I've been through things that probably shouldn't have kept pushing. But I did. And now that I've done it, and now that I realize it's all just data, I mean, failures are informing our next better step, which is pretty amazing. Like, to think, like, let's say we burnt $100,000 last year in a marketing tactic that didn't work. Great. Let's not do that again. But there's actually a caveat to that. Let's not do that again, assuming we had high skilled people who have done it before at the helm. Because I think a lot of the time we can fail in things that we actually aren't necessarily qualified to be doing, and then we say it doesn't work, and that's wrong. Like, we just didn't know how, and we did it wrong, and then we say it doesn't work. But we just have to find the right people to help us. I mean, there's that whole book. Let's read a book together real quick. It's called Who Not How, and we've read the whole thing. Yes. And like that, the book talks about, it's not about how we're going to get something done. It's about who's going to help us, because I think there's always somebody with a skill set somewhere. Like, maybe we don't have the budget to afford them yet, but we can probably find a way to get at least some advice and counsel and guidance on, is the investment we made that didn't work, did we do it right? Because maybe we did it wrong, and maybe it would work if we did it right.
It's kind of like diets. A lot of diets work if the operator does the diet, but if the operator doesn't do the diet, they blame the diet.
Yes, exactly.
So what is your journey to getting the right people in the right seats and finding those? Because I feel like as a leader, we have to integrate our own alpha and empathy to lead well, right? But then the people who we're putting in place also have to integrate their alphas and empathies to be the dreamer and the doer in the seats that they're owning. So what does that process look like for you?
Well, I think it's two parts. I do think it is. So when I look for a founder, I meet a lot of early stage SaaS founders, tech founders. They're all raising money. They've all got their decks. I'm a mentor at the Founder Institute. I help out with the local accelerator here in DC for cash flowing companies trying to tip $1 million or more in revenue. That's called Entrepreneurial here. I'm a co-founder of the DC Tech and Venture Coalition, a trade org here in DC for DMV tech founders. So I spend a lot of time with greener founders raising money for the first time. And I actually, I don't I tell them I don't want to see their decks for the most part, because they're all trained by these different groups to pitch, raise money. I'm always like, no, let's just talk. Like, what do you want to talk about? And I'm like, well, I want to talk about your personal passion. And so I always want to know about that, because I think that a founder is like 10 times more likely to succeed if they've created a company that has a purpose that ladders up to their personal passion. I think that's step one. Like, founder has personal passion. Founder has an idea to solve a problem that is in line with what they personally care about. Maybe not the most, but maybe the top three things they care most. One of the top three things they care most about. So I think that's the first half, or maybe the first third, of finding the right people, because, that founder, that passion will be a beacon to the people who want to be a part of that purpose or that mission.
Yes. I also think when things get hard, if you don't have that passion inside of you to circle back to, then you're not pushing through the brick walls. The brick wall is going to stop you. But when you have it inside of you, and then it's really your tribal call. So you're attracting, it's a movement. You're attracting everybody to you that has that same resonance and that same passion.
Exactly. And so I think that's a good bit of the challenge is if you solve for that, you're exactly right. You become magnetic to the other people who care about X, and then it becomes less about, trying to figure out, it makes it easier to say no to people who aren't interested in it. It makes it easier to say yes to people who are. And then I think, and I've only recently stumbled across this concept. I'm surprised I've never heard it before, but I think if the first half is having that passion around what you're building, I think that the second major piece, I'm rereading Adam Grant's Give and Take, because every time I read a great book, I find something else I didn't find last time. And this time I found in a footnote something that's called expedition behavior. Have you heard of that phrase before?
No, enlighten me.
So this is direct from Adam Grant, because I sent this quote to about probably 3,000 people over the last couple of days. But Adam Grant says that expedition behavior involves putting the group's goals and mission first and showing the same amount of concern for others as you do for yourself. And that it comes from like wilderness expeditions, where when groups are out together in the wild and they're packing backpacks and tents and things, it's an expedition behavior mindset means that everybody's looking out for each other. And so I think part two, first start with a passion, with a founder, purpose that matches that passion, collecting the people who also believe in that purpose, and preferably a little bit of the same passion. And then it's building a culture just chock full of expedition behavior, where people are looking out for each other every day. And instead of, like a community, instead of finger pointing if somebody does something wrong, whatever that actually means, but instead of somebody is struggling, tapping them and being like, hey, can I help? Like, because we all are aligned to the same mission and the same purpose. So, hey, I know it looks like you're having a hard time with this thing. Like, want me to tag in? Like, do you have what you need? Do you want me to help get what you need? Because again, we're all moving in the same direction.
Reminds me of a saying that says, leaders create environments create communities create behavior, and behavior creates results.
That's fantastic. I love that.
And as leaders, that is a big torch to carry.
Yes, it is. It is. But I think, I think it's one of the things that you can, that a leader, a founder, executive, an entrepreneur, I think it's something that you can that you can train through example. I mean, and it can be as simple as like cutting out the blame game as sort of like a step one. Like instead of, just for example, instead of like saying, why didn't you do this? Like, this is like unacceptable. It's like saying, hey, we agreed on this together. It's not here yet. Like, what do you need? Like, is this not something? And again, there are a lot of people in the wrong seats, and that's okay. And I think, having a little bit of compassion allows others to be honest enough. Like, if they have the psychological safety of not worried about getting emotionally, like emotionally sort of, if they have the emotional and psychological safety of being able to speak their mind, I think two things happen. One, they'll be honest if they're in the wrong seat, because they know it's not going to result in some painful emotion. And two, we'll just have better ideas in general, because if everybody at the table contributes, we'll have healthier, like better ideas and things that are more interesting, with like a melting pot of opinions and beliefs of, diverse backgrounds, which is magical.
Yes. I have found, let me know if this is true for you also, I have found that creating psychological safety in the teams comes from also creating psychological safety within myself. So I have to be able to entertain different ideas and different ways of thinking or perspectives without necessarily adopting it fully as my own, but learning, okay, what fits, what doesn't, and what can I transition away that is no longer serving me and fill it with something that is. Have you found that as well for yourself?
Yes. Yeah. That's, my first decade of entrepreneurship. Matthew McConaughey has a great quote. It's to be less impressed and more involved. And I feel like my first decade, I was more impressed and less involved. And decade two, I'm less impressed and more involved. And I think that's kind of a part of, the realization of, we spend all of our time patting ourselves on the back for what we've created, instead of looking around and saying, are we going in the right direction? Do we have everything we need? Are the people in the right places? Are they equipped to get the job done? Like, is it the right team? It's easy to just say, hey, I've done this before, we're good. And it's much, much harder to ask those questions and actually be open to the inputs, because it means that at some point, maybe we made a wrong decision, but that's okay if we can be open to it.
Yes. I have relearned, and I've learned this many times, but the sooner I listen, the less painful the lesson.
Yes. Oh, that's a good little quote there. I like that. I'm going to write that one down, Staci.
But us maverick entrepreneurs, sometimes we don't like listening.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially, I see it a lot in the various groups I'm a part of. Like, I've had someone straight up tell me that they don't need to do customer validation before bringing a new product to market, like, which is absurd. I was like, okay. Let me send you a list of books, and if you read them, it'll be easier. But I'm also not going to insist that you figure out what other people want if you're so certain that okay.
That's such an interesting thing, because I think sometimes when we're further down the path in our entrepreneur journey, we can look at other folks and be like, hey, there's a landmine there. Don't step there. Oh, don't, do proof of concept before you build out a whole product offering. We can see those landmines. But the beautiful thing about entrepreneurship is every entrepreneur will get that lesson, because the market will give that lesson, whether or not another entrepreneur tells us or not.
Yes, I have a Henry Ford quote here that I wrote down to bring to you, and it's if there is any great secret of success in life, it lies in the ability to put yourself in the other person's place and to see things from their point of view.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And if we skip that, our product's probably not going to land, because if we assume that we know what the market wants without checking first, it's very easy to spend a lot of money building something that nobody wants.
Mm-hmm. Now, shifting a gear a little bit, do you have a in-person team or a remote team?
So we so my growth agency model B, or our growth agency model B, it was in person in Chinatown pre-pandemic, but post-pandemic we sort of popcorned all around the country. So I'm still here in Washington, D.C. on the same block in a WeWork, actually. Like our fancy office was on the other corner, and now I'm on the WeWork on the opposite corner. But what we do that we found works really well is we make sure that we all fly into one place every quarter and spend a couple of days together for like team bonding and some work stuff, some fun stuff, and just make sure that we know who's on the other side of the Zoom by getting together once a quarter.
Yes. Okay, that leads into what I was wanting to share. So a mistake I've made, and I want to know if you've made this too. So we have a remote team, and sometimes you can just hide behind your keyboard. You can shoot off emails, you can shoot off messages, you can make comments on social media. And I think sometimes we forget that there is a human being on the other side of the screen. And sometimes we also forget that we're on the same team. So I had an experience within my company where we all wanted the same things, but the approach everyone was doing was different. So I made everybody get on Zoom, cameras on, and I was like, look, there's a human being on the other side. You're here, they're there. We want the same thing, but the answer isn't here. It's a new sacred agreement. We have to agree that we both want the same things. We're not going to compromise, but we're going to have a new sacred agreement. This is how we're going to operate in order so that the other person on the other side can feel that you're for them and you're with them. Kind of that expansion journey or that tribal journey you were talking about. Like, we have to know the other person is in the trenches with us, as well as going up the mountain to stick our flag. And so quarterly is awesome for integrating that. But how have you just navigated that? Because it's really just navigating human nature. We think we're separate, but we're really not.
Yeah, well, one of the things is I think in our values, which are plastered on our website at Model B, we have a 100% jerk-free policy. I think that there can be a lot of resistance. I think resistance when it comes to sort of teaming to summit. I think resistance is often an indicator that it might be a wrong seat.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've spent more time than I can even possibly describe to you trying to adjust internal policies and processes to fit with somebody's personal opinions around how something should be done, only to realize on the other side there was really just the wrong person in the wrong seat. And that doesn't mean they don't have a right seat in the same company. They might, or they might not have a seat in the company or community at all. And that's okay. Like I always say, I never shy away from letting somebody go, because I think of it as setting them free. If somebody is that against the idea of saying, look, this is how we summit together, we're trying to get to the same place here, can't we all get in alignment? And if it's a bunch of no's or like fighting, kicking and scratching, it may not be the right group for them. And that's okay. Yeah. Because there's probably, again, setting them free, there's probably a group they'll love, a community they want to be a part of, or they're excited to show up every day, and you can help them find it by letting them free.
Yes. There's such wisdom in that, because sometimes we hold on to situations or do emotional and gymnastics to try to make something work when it really wasn't supposed to work, and we were supposed to let it dissolve so something more beautiful and magical could come together.
Yeah, and I think that applies to all relationships in all walks of life as well. It's not
Yes.
just companies, it's
Mm-hmm.
personal relationships. Now, my friends don't love it, but I usually try to pop champagne when I hear that there are breakups. So I try to calm it down these days, but I love breakups. I'm like, yes, what are we doing next? Good. You figured it out. And they're like, Ashton, I'm hurting. I'm like, oh, right, I'm sorry. I apologize profusely. We'll pop champagne in a few months
You're
when
like, I'm sorry, you're over identifying with the data point. That was just a data point. Let's move on.
Oh yeah, I try to reel that in these days, because I don't want to hurt people's feelings. But I always get excited. I'm like, yeah, it's like great. What's next? This is great.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so what's your definition of success?
Ooh. Um. Wow. Well, so I'll answer that in two parts. The first part is in my companies. It's one of our latest teammates at Model B came on. For some reason they let me do final interview. I wasn't sure why, because they usually don't. In fact, sometimes they don't interview at all. But so they put me on final interview with somebody, and she asked me. She goes, "Ashton, what's your definition of my success in this company?" And I was like, "Well, the first part is obvious. Like, we're an advertising and growth agency, so I was like, I'm going to look to you for." Length of contract of the clients you manage and contract growth, because those are your metrics. Like, how long are you keeping the clients, and are you growing the contracts? And I was like, and then from a higher level, I'm going to look at how long you stay here, because that's an indicator of whether or not we're the right place for you. But then I said, but personally, I'm going to look to see whether or not you're having a great time and doing great work. Like, are you enjoying like coming into the virtual office? Like, are you excited by the stuff that you're building? Because that's how we do the best work of our lives, is by, being excited about what we're building, by caring about like the work that we're doing. So that means a lot to me, like for people to show up and just be happy to be here. I think that's wildly important.
So what are you most excited about right now?
What am I most excited about? Wow, what a question on the second day of 2024.
Too much champagne a few nights ago?
Most nights, Staci. Most nights. Remember, I have a few bars in the portfolio, and it's my duty to ensure that the team has a mascot to come around, and it's also a great place to take clients. But well, so I'm working on. I almost dove in with this a little bit earlier. You had mentioned something about freedom and chewing your arm off. Paw. I'm actually working on so my significant life partner Joy and I have done our like family. It's just the two of us, but we've done our family values. We did that a couple of years ago, so we update those. I have all the corporate values, but I've realized that I've never done my personal values, so I haven't been doing a lot of goal setting this year. I have some numerical goals that are very simple. But I haven't done a lot of sort of 2024 goal setting, goal planning, because one, I have my numerical goal, and two, my next gate for personal development is I want to develop my own value system and the stuff I care about. And I only have one cooked so far, and it's very simple, and I thought you'd like it. It's freedom of movement. Is sort of like my number one, like, known value from the exploration that I've done. That's very, very important to me as a human.
Yes.
Both for myself and also for the rest of the world, is something I like to see.
How would you define freedom of movement?
I would define that for myself as the ability to, not be sort of stuck to one place. I love traveling a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
I get invited to a lot of conferences and things, and if I have the right teams and the right companies, I've got about 8 companies in my portfolio now, and all of them are doing pretty well. And if I set them up right, it doesn't like I don't need to be actively involved in the day to day. Just need to watch the top level metrics, make sure that everybody's happy, enjoying their jobs and their lives, and obviously what I'm best at is feeding them new business as I travel around. So I like to be able to hop on a plane at the drop of the hat. That's also because, my first decade of entrepreneurship, I was sort of like a busybody micromanager because I didn't have folks I could like trust completely in the companies. So I depended on myself. These days, I depend on people who are way better than me, like managing the day to day and bringing great visions to life. And that's really kind of incredible, I think. But so, yeah, as long as I'm not stuck to one place. Now, we're not going to get into this because it would go too long, but also freedom of movement for others means like less fiefdoms, tribalism, and land grabs. But I think that's the topic for a different podcast, Staci.
Oh, we could go deep on that one too. So
Yeah.
I have one other question. I did a little research and I got to know, who dresses you?
Really? Nobody's ever asked me that. I dress me. Wait, is that so you can avoid them?
No, but I looked at your Instagram and you literally do all of these shoots in different outfits, and it's like a silly thing.
Isn't it so funny? No, everybody makes fun of me for my Instagram. It's so cheeky. Like I was laughing. I pulled it up last night and I started laughing because I try to do it in 5. I try to do quote and then photo and like 5 like mini themes,
Yeah.
and like the last 4 are me in the different outfits, and it just makes me giggle every time I'm like, you're ridiculous. Like I'm ridiculous.
It
It's
makes me
ridiculous.
giggle. And one of my personal values is playing my way to success. If it's not fun, I don't want to do it.
I love that.
I
I love that.
And I could tell that you played
Yes.
for what you put out there.
Yes. If we're going to do this, we might as well have a great time about it, because I do think that there is a big element of sacrifice in entrepreneurship. Ultimately, and I remind myself this all the time, whenever I have something bad happen in any of the companies, I very gently and lovingly remind myself that it is entirely my fault.
Yes.
I'm like, yep, that is all you. Because even if it was a co-founder who made a decision, you chose to work with them.
Yes.
And or if it's somebody that you brought on board, and or a thing that you didn't have like bumpers around, that is your fault. And that's, it's a little tough sometimes when you make decisions that do bad stuff and it's all your fault. So I agree with you completely, Staci. We have to have a nice time, or else why would we want to shoulder that responsibility every day?
Yes. One of my personal values also is extreme ownership with boundaries. So I would take extreme ownership too far and take on other people's burdens, like try to clean up the shit in their yard type of situation. Now I'm like, you own your shit, I'll own mine shit, and let's collaborate.
Yes. No, exactly. And I think that's it's taken me a lot of time. I'm actually not great at telling people like barking orders at people. It's not something I'm very good at. I'm much better at saying, hey, don't we all want to go in this direction together? And it's still a learning journey for me to figure out that balance between barking orders and giving people direction, and not just wanting to, if I fail at providing direction, not just doing it myself.
Yes.
That's tough.
I think that is how we integrate our alpha and our empathy as leaders, the journey. So if people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Oh, I'm everywhere. Signal, WhatsApp, Facebook, although I don't check Messenger. So that's the one way actually you can't get a hold of me is messaging me on Facebook because I muted it. But Instagram, I'm just Ashtan Moore, Ashtan Moore everywhere. LinkedIn's probably best if you want to hang out. And Staci, I always tell everybody, if anybody wants to chat, like marketing, like business, geez, at this point, like the capital markets and fundraising, startups, anything at all, I will happily give an hour to any founder, any executive. I don't bill as a consultant because I feel like it would make my time finite the moment I put a dollar to it. Mm-hmm. So you might find me referring you to some of my companies after that hour, but I promise it's only if it's the right fit. Mm-hmm. And you'll probably end up with a bunch of homework where if you do it, I'm happy to get together again. But that's the trick, Staci. I've learned to give people homework after those hour calls because if they do it, they've earned more time.
Mm-hmm. I learned that exact same lesson. Well, I enjoyed this conversation. And I look forward to cheering for you and seeing your outfit changes on Instagram. And everyone listening, I believe we can build businesses and have beautiful lives. So we must learn to integrate our alpha and our empathy so that we can get shit done and stay rooted as leaders.
Fantastic.
I love deep conversations. I don't know about you, but something about going deep with soulful, reflective individuals who are leading businesses and organizations is so impactful and powerful. I would love to know which part of this episode resonated with you. Take a clip, tag me in it on social media, and get out there and do some things because we can't win if we don't execute. So trying and executing and learning through all the messiness is where all the growth and grit comes from. I'm excited to see how this inspired you, and if it did resonate, tag me and share it with somebody who would benefit as well. I'm rooting for you. Cheers, friend.